They were sons, daughters, babies, students, dreamers. But now they are hashtags, headlines, gravestones, names etched in reports just for formalities. This is Samantha Pendo. She was only 6 months old. She never got to crawl, never spoke her first words, because she was murdered, not in an accident, but in her mother's arms, after police struck her during a night raid. Her crime? She could have done none, and she is not alone. Kwekwe Mwandaza, 14 years old. Evans Kiratu, 21. Emmanuel Mutura, 19. Benson Jiru, 22. Eric Shieni, 27. Rex Masai, 29. This list doesn't end. Each name has a face, a story, a life cut short, all by the very people sworn to protect them. So how did we get here? How did the Kenyan police, an institution meant to serve and protect, become a source of fear and brutality? In order to understand why the police are so merciless and brutal today, I'll have to take you back to the beginning of it all. The year is 1895. Britain declares Kenya a protectorate, not for freedom, not for peace, but for control. The British Empire wanted land, labor, and order, but resistance was strong. Communities refused to give up their land. They protested unfair taxes, and soon, strong movements like the Mau Mau began to rise. So, for the British to be able to enforce their law, they crafted a solution. An armed unit loyal to the empire, the Kenya Police Force. But do not be fooled. This wasn't a force to serve or protect the African people. Its purpose was clear: enforce colonial law, suppress uprisings, break the will of the natives, and most of all, protect the white settlers and their interests. Answerable only to the British governor, these officers were trained to brutalize, not to mediate, not to defend, not to build trust, but to silence. You resisted, you were whipped, jailed, and even shot. You refused taxes, your home was torched, and your livestock was taken. And as if this wasn't enough, all African males above 15 were forced to wear what was called kipande, an identity document strapped around the neck, a humiliating badge of control worn like a noose, marking them not as citizens, but as livestock under surveillance. This was to ensure the African laborers were easy to spot, and in addition, it allowed them more movement around the unrestricted areas. Entire communities lived in fear, not just of colonial laws, but of the African officers, popularly known as askaris, trained to brutalize them on command. These askaris weren't heroes in their villages, they were enemies. This wasn't considered law enforcement, this was domination. And even after independence, that blueprint never changed. (1963) Kenya gains independence. A new flag rises, and with it, a new hope. Out with the old and in with the new. But something else stays, something far more dangerous than guns or laws. A system. The police force is left intact, same structure, same methods, only the faces at the top change from white to black. The first Kenyan government, led by Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, quickly realized the power of the police. They could be used not just to fight crime, but to crush opposition, monitor dissent, and silence critics. Political police, under the special branch, grew in power. Surveillance became the norm. Torture was common. In short, the system stayed, only now it served new masters. To make you understand the levels of brutality exercised by the police, allow me to paint a few graphic images for you. In 1969, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta visits Kisumu to launch a new hospital. There, he's met with an outrage over his alleged involvement in the assassination of Tom Mboya. When the riots break, the presidential guards and the police open fire on civilians. Men, women, and children who had come to listen to their leader are shot dead, never to go back to their families alive. And it wasn't just them affected. According to reports, women and children who were as far as 50 kilometers away from the riot were also murdered by these killer cops. Observers estimate around 100 people, but the government sources only officially noted 11 fatalities. Under President Moi, it gets worse. With his Jeshi la Mzee youth militia, his regime turns the police into a political army. They torture oppositions, detain activists without trial, disappear dissidents, use excessive force on peaceful protesters, and assassinations and cover-ups of high-profile individuals fill the media. And the public learns a dangerous lesson. In Kenya, questioning power means risking your life. During President Mwai Kibaki's tenure, the 2007 post-election violence exposes the full horror of questioning power from above. Police are caught on camera executing protesters.
I've had a few moments, even though he fall down, yes.
Women, children disappear, and families are massacred. Thousands die in the chaos, many at the hands of the police. This is not the first, nor will it be the last, of the atrocious deeds done by the men in uniform. August 2014, 2 police officers shot dead a 14-year-old girl named Kwekwe Mwandaza. And when the case goes public, they claim that the 14-year-old girl had wounded one of them with a machete and destroyed one of their guns. So, just to recap, these 2 police officers were to raid the house of George Zani, Kwekwe's uncle. However, they did not establish who was in the house before the raid, and when they entered, they opened fire twice on a 14-year-old girl, but not after she had wounded one of them and destroyed one of their guns. June 2024, the Gen Z have took to the streets to protest about the unbearable living standards set by the government through increased taxations. But this is going to be one of the worst protests to have ever been held in the country. In an expose featured by BBC, they reveal how a trained officer had, in point blank, pointed his gun at the back of an unarmed protester and, at 25 meters, shot him in the head, killing him on the spot.
But the third casualty is beyond Ademba's help.
Eric is just one of the many protesters who are gunned down and murdered by uniformed and non-uniformed police officers. And according to Reuters, the police tried to cover up these murders. 19-year-old Charles Owino, who died of a gunshot wound to the head, is recorded as road accident in the morgue logbook. He is just one of the fatalities recorded as accidents, despite being victims of a police gun. What started under colonial rule continues under Kenyan leadership unchecked. This pattern continues from Moi's KANU dictatorship to Kibaki's 2007 post-election chaos to the violence in 2013, 2017, and even in 2024. Each wave is bloodier than the last, and each time the police are right at the center. Let's talk about protests. Protests are legal, protected under the Constitution. But in Kenya, protests mean danger. Police respond with tear gas, batons, live bullets, and bone-crushing kicks. In 2023 and 2024, young people took to the streets, demanding better governance, lower cost of living, and an end to corruption. What did they get? Death. Rex Masai, a 29-year-old young man, was shot in the thigh during a peaceful protest. He was unarmed, he was peaceful. His crime? Being seen by a man of the law. Kennedy Onyango was only 12 years old. He was a son, a bright student, a friend. He was among the country's future generation. It was a bad day in the streets. The police were everywhere, and they were armed to the teeth. But Kennedy, being the bright student that he was, decided to go borrow a book from a friend. His mother waved him goodbye as he slipped his shoes on and started running toward the direction of his friend's house, not knowing that she was letting her son ride into certain death. Kennedy Onyango was only 12 years old. He wasn't an organized criminal infiltrating the protests. He wasn't a grown man with a weapon tucked in his waist. He wasn't even concerned with the action-filled streets riddled with bullets and bodies. He was only doing what children do, minding their business. But a grown policeman who had undergone at least 6 months of training, taught how to handle a weapon, and who had the common understanding of the difference between a protester and a child, somehow shot the little child, and as a result, taking his life, and denying his family the right to see what a bright man he could have become. To this day, no police officer has taken the blame for the murder of this young child. In fact, there are exceedingly few records of police officers ever taking the blame for having someone killed and being prosecuted over it. Somehow, everyone who the police do kill, whether in their homes, streets, or anywhere else for that matter, is always guilty of a crime or about to do a crime, and the police just happen to be very good at their jobs of finding them in the correct time, at the correct place.
When police officers raid a place, they go to raid, trust me, they are not wrong. Trust me, if we don't kill these people, they will kill you. Could you please talk to your son or daughter to deviate from this behavior, or we'll take action. And when we catch up with you, we do the necessary.
What's the necessary?
I wouldn't mention that.
And then there is baby Pendo, a child killed while sleeping. Her parents have waited years for justice. An inquest ruled police were responsible, but to this day, no officer has been jailed for her death. What do you tell her mother? That her child's life mattered? That justice is blind? Because from where we stand, justice is bleeding. It is worth noting, however, that police brutality doesn't always involve live bullets and swinging batons. Sometimes it's quieter, slipped into a handshake or folded in a pocket.
We have billions of Kenya shillings lost in corruption every single day, and no one is held to account.
For many traffic police officers, it begins with a crumpled 50-shilling note, tucked and twisted like a piece of chewing gum. What is popularly known as yachai is actually a wordplay to mean bribing the man of the law. And all of these things are done anytime, anywhere. It's not even a secret anymore. Corruption is a chronic disease in Kenya, and nearly every citizen has encountered it. In April 2025, two officers, Corporal Raphael Mukavu and Constable Doreen Mwendwa from Muthinga Police Post in Nyeri County, were caught trying to convert a drug bust into a private, profitable business. After arresting a woman in possession of marijuana, the officers allegedly released her in exchange for a 100,000 shilling bribe. They then split the resources equally among themselves. The cash was allegedly sent to Corporal Mukavu, while the 2 kilogram stash was found later in Constable Mwendwa's home. In response to this embarrassing event, the police headquarters labeled it as an isolated incident, a term Kenyans have grown too familiar with, especially when scandals risk public outrage. But in all honesty, this wasn't a unique incident to Kenyans. From matatu drivers to hawkers, many Kenyans know that seeing a police officer often means reaching into your pocket. They call it a motivation fee, a not so subtle tax for service, safety, or simply peace of mind. In a 2017 national survey, when Kenyans were asked why they paid bribes, 48% said it was the only way to access services, 17% paid to speed things up, 13% paid to avoid conflict with authorities, and 10% admitted they paid simply because it was the norm. When 1 in every 10 people gives bribes out of pure habit, it's no longer just a crime, it's culture. And even after paying these bribes, the results you expect aren't always guaranteed. A 2023 survey by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, or EACC, revealed that only 36.2% of individuals were satisfied with the service they received after paying a bribe. Still, the practice continues. Why? Because the system expects it. From matatu drivers to small business owners, most Kenyans learn to navigate the daily grind with bribe money tagged alongside their IDs. According to EACC's 2023 report, the average bribe had risen dramatically from 3,000 to over 11,000. And 75 out of every 100 individuals admitted to bribing traffic police officers in 2024 alone. Corruption has infected nearly every institution in the country. From the chief's office to the judiciary, no corner of public service has been spared. So now we ask, what do the police really protect? To understand the crisis we have today, we need to look beyond the uniform. Police aren't trained to serve, they are trained to dominate. From day one in Kiganjo Police Training College, recruits are broken down. They are taught to obey, not to think, to fear their seniors, and to demand that same fear from the public. Corruption runs deep. Promotions are sold, not earned. And according to some reports, other officers pay to join the force and expect to earn it back through bribes and extortion. The structure is toxic from the top down. Junior officers are underpaid, overworked, and barely supported. so they take bribes just to survive. Senior commanders protect their interests using junior officers as pawns. There's no trust between the public and the police anymore. People don't call 999 for assistance. They call a neighbor or they stay silent. Police rarely respond on time, and when they do, it's often with violence. Meanwhile, youth in the slums are profiled. If you are young and poor, you're a suspect.
So when I was graduating, I just saw the boy lying there. His clothes were soiled with blood. Yes.
Do you know where the police shot him?
The doctor told us that he had 4 bullets around the chest and one which passed here.
He's been shot 5 times.
Yes.
Many are executed without trial. Their names never make the news.
How do you then target someone? Someone's a burglar, someone's house breaking. What do you then do?
We approach that person. And if the person stays with their parents, we talk to their parents. So we tell them, could you please talk to your son or daughter to deviate from this behavior, or we'll take action. And when we catch up with you, we do the necessary.
What's the necessary?
I wouldn't mention that.
Their kids never face justice. These are extrajudicial killings, and they are routine. Ask around in Nairobi, Kisumu, Eldoret, Mombasa, or anywhere. People will tell you the same thing. They fear the badge more than they fear the criminals. And can you blame them? When every protest ends in tear gas, when every call for justice requires utoe kitu kidogo, when the people paid to serve you are the same people who make you bleed, who will you turn to? In a video by Vice, an anonymous cop claiming to be part of Kenya's hit squads confessed that they do forcefully abduct people, torture them, and sometimes assassinate them.
So how often is it that you actually have to kill a suspected criminal?
Ile iko. Huyu mtu ulimshika, umepeleka kotini, amefungwa. Kuna right of appeal. Ameenda high court, ameachiliwa, ama ameenda ile right yake ya pili, imemruhusu kutoka. Amekuja tena kwa community, unampata tena kwa makosa. Hakuna dawa nyingine, you simply eliminate.
So now another question rises. Is it really utumishi kwa wote, or is it utumishi kwa wote at a fee? After years of blood on the streets and cries that never reached the ears of justice, a new hope was formed in 2011. It was called IPOA, the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. Its mission? Investigate police misconduct, hold rogue police officers accountable, and restore the people's trust in the badge. It sounded like a promise, like maybe, just maybe, the uniform would mean safety again. But here's the reality. Cases came in by the thousands, investigations were carried out, witnesses spoke, and reports were written, but still, silence. IPOA was meant to be a shield for the people, but in truth, it became just another mirror reflecting the rot in the system. For example, as latest as May 2025, on the official website, IPOA states that it has received and processed over 30,000 complaints. Out of these cases, only a little over 5,000 of these investigations have been completed. And from this, only 33 of them have led to successful convictions. This consequently means that only one of every 151 cases leads up to a successful conviction. And if you think this is disheartening, it is because it probably is. Justice for police misconduct is still the exception and not the rule. Why? Well, your guess is as good as mine. Even in high-profile cases, like that of Constable Edward Kirui, a cop who had been filmed killing 2 protesters on live television, the law fell short of its role. And after 14 years of delays, the court made the decision that he was not guilty of the crime. Issues like interference, delays, and obstruction are not uncommon to occur. Sometimes, officers refused to cooperate entirely. And so, the watchdog created to bite was left toothless, a symbol of what could have been, if only justice in Kenya didn't come wearing handcuffs of its own. Police officers are rarely prosecuted. Convictions are even rarer.
In 2011, an independent oversight body was formed. Since then, there have been over 2,000 recorded cases of police misconduct. Only 9 of them have led to convictions.
So we ask again, what happens when the system made to correct them falls quietly into the same silence? Why did IPOA release the investigation on 2024 protests only after coverage by an international media? Is it pressure that runs the system effectively now? And if that is the case in actuality, what happens when the people meant to protect us protect each other instead? However, despite these tragic tales, it is imperative to note that there are several cops who have stood out for upholding the law and fulfilling their promises with all their might, with some even losing their lives over it. For reference, Seronei, a man who had served the Kenya police for 17 years, had done his job of being a good officer so well that one of his seniors told him he had made it hard for road cops to earn a living, and it was only a matter of time before they took him down. His fellow police officers would later stop him in his vehicle and spray a total of 56 bullets with him inside the vehicle. He luckily survived after good citizens rushed him to the hospital. After the attempt on his life, he was dismissed from the police force unceremoniously in 2001. The police would later claim that the tragic incident was a classic case of mistaken identity, despite one of the shooters being a colleague of Seronei, who knew the vehicle he drove. And in another case, in 2022, a police officer arrested 5 of his fellow police officers for impersonating KRA officials and extorting money from a business owner. So despite the drawbacks of the men in uniforms betraying the ones they ought to protect, there are outlier officers, ones who uphold the law to the end, despite making enemies in the force. Fearing the uniform is a common trend in the whole country, and understandably so. But it doesn't have to end here. Reform is not impossible. Other nations have done it, so can we. It starts with accountability. We must demand transparency, timely independent investigations, successful prosecutions. We must pay our officers well, so bribery isn't seen as survival. We must empower oversight bodies with real authority. And most of all, these officers must be taught humanity. They must be taught to understand the meaning of surrender. They must be taught to know when to stop. Because the country has been through enough turmoil. And for all the fallen comrades like Evans Kiratu, Rex Masai, David Chege, Baby Pendo, and the countless others whose names we may never know, a better blueprint is imperative for the men in uniform. Because truth be told, the badge was never broken, It was built this way. And until we rebuild it, until we tear out its roots and replant something better, the cycle will continue. Names will be added, mothers will mourn, and the people will keep asking, who protects us from the protectors?